the backbone of America.
Welcome. Today we're here with Brian Garita. Brian is a commercial real estate broker and somewhat of a very successful individual in the social media game. Brian, why don't you introduce yourself? First of all, thank you for being here on the podcast.
Thank you.
And tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get started in the game, and what do you hope to accomplish?
So my name is Brian Garita, and I'm a real estate broker focusing on ground up land development. And I work with different developers, helping them find acquisition of potential parcels throughout Miami-Dade County that makes sense to either develop multifamily, industrial, or anything that they're trying to do. And I sit with them, come up with a game plan, figure out what makes sense. I work with large developers, small developers, and even developers that are starting out who may not be familiar with the market, but need somebody to hold their hand and guide them through this whole process.
Understood. Now, let me ask you a question. When you got into the real estate game, why not focus just on residential or commercial sales? Why development?
So development, I feel like there's so much opportunity there because you have to use more logical reasoning, understanding, and that's more my background. So I have my graduate degree in public finance, and mainly what I like about commercial real estate is that every deal and transaction is different. It's not whether I walk into a house and I feel, the vibes are good or nice, I'm going to make a transaction or I'm not. It's, do the numbers make sense? Do the numbers pencil out? How can we structure a deal? No deal is the same as the other one, and it requires a lot more of a thought out process. And there's so much opportunities within commercial real estate that you can do a lot of different things. And in commercial real estate specifically, for you to be successful, you have to be more niche. So if you're going to be office, that's your bread and butter. You're an office broker focusing in that segment. If you're doing land, like what I do, you're focused on that. And there's a lot more opportunities in different verticals. And then obviously, the impact that you're doing in the community is huge. If you find a piece of land that's 20 acres and you're building a huge development there, well, it's kind of cool to know, hey, I'm part of the reason why all these people are living here now. So it's a little bit of like history behind the scenes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like what you mentioned as far as it being a niche. If I wanted to be in the commercial real estate game, I mean, becoming a focus on the development side would be much more difficult to get. So I feel like it's a barrier of entry, to deal with these companies that are not buying, $1, $2, $3 million properties. They're buying $25 million properties. So yeah, once you're in, you really have some protection there from any new entrants, Let's see. So why did you become an influencer in the social media game? Did you feel that the way to become more successful in real estate was through this, or did it just happen by coincidence?
So I think so in the society that we live in now, it's all about how can you market yourself. If you're a broker, at the end of the day, you basically live from what you eat. You have to be every day working, you have to be hustling every single day. And social media gives you one of those opportunities where if you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about, it amplifies your reach and you can help more people. So when I started doing this journey, I just started documenting, what are these developments that are happening in the community. And I like these developments. I'm looking at it, I'm reading it, I'm doing my research. And then one day I said, maybe other people like this. Let me document my journey and let me document some of these developments that I'm seeing happening in my community. And then one thing led to the other, and all of a sudden I saw more people started to like it. And real estate's a very boring topic. Anybody who's doing commercial real estate, it's not a very exciting, sexy thing. So how can I turn something that impacts all of us into something that at the end of the day in social media where people are going to care about it, but without digging too much into the weeds and then boring everybody?
Yeah. As someone that's very successful with social media, has it impacted? I mean, over lunch, we discussed that it has made a significant impact in the clients that you get. In fact, that's one of the ways that we got connected. Mm-hmm. Do you recommend that for anyone that's out there doing real estate to say, yes, listen, if you want to survive, if you want to do well, this is something you have to do. You're going to have to get comfortable in front of a camera, or you can do it without it.
I think in the society we live in now, social media is a necessity. If you're a business owner, you have to be doing social media and you have to be the one holding the banner, the highest and the strongest. Because in business, nobody's going to come and give you anything. And you have to put yourself out there if people want to know who you are. So like back in the day, in the 50s and the 60s, if you wanted to get more clients, you had to spend money on advertising, magazines, TV infomercials. Now that we have the access right to our phones, and you can reach thousands of people, maybe potentially millions of people, there's so much opportunity you can help people. But I think the issue with social media is there's a lot of vanity posting and people just putting things out there just to, show their lifestyle. You may live that lifestyle, but at the end of the day, what is the value that you're giving people? Because that's what people care about. They're using these tools now more so for education. And we use it too. I use it as well. Like, there's people that I follow as well and outlets that I'm looking at on a daily basis. Like, hey, okay, what are they doing? What's interesting for knowledge purposes. But yes, going back to your question, you got to be on it, especially in society. And if you look at where everything's trending, everything is more digital than before.
I agree. On your social media platforms, I mean, is it common that you would get individuals from outside of the country? Being here in Miami, I mean, it's not a bad thing because obviously there's a lot of investment, foreign investment that's here. But if I lived, for example, in South Carolina, it's really not going to be an impact. Having outside clients, no one's buying in South Carolina. Do you get guys all over the country that call you?
I have people that call me from a lot of different places that are interesting. So, like, for example, if you are a multifamily operator based out of New York and you don't understand the Miami market and you need some money that you need deployed down here, maybe you're not too familiar with how's Miami performing or where the developments, what's going on, you may look on social media, believe it or not, people do it, and they start researching and they start looking at, okay, so what's going on with this development? And if they see on these social platforms that, you're talking about developments or you're talking about, lending or whatever it is that you're doing, people are going to reach out because, they're inquisitive. And then people will know very quickly if you're full of it or if you know what you're talking about or if you don't. The social media is at a level where everybody has so much mistrust. So they're going to do their homework before they even reach out to you. And it's surprising. People do reach out to me. They do ask for questions. And I do help them. And yes, it does generate business. But you got to come from a place of how can I help and serve you? And then at some point, it will turn to business.
Yeah. Now, for individuals that are hearing this, they want to get your input on saying, is now a time to buy? And I'm not talking about for land developers, because developers are savvy, investors. They're going to look at the numbers. But, the average investor is looking to buy a home or maybe a property for their business. Would you say now is a good time to buy?
I think it depends on what is your outlook for the next 10 years in Miami. If you think Miami is going to be bullish, you're very strong on the story that more people are migrating here every single day. The growth of Miami is going to be there. All these developments, we're seeing it right now. Miami's literally is being terraformed in front of our eyes. If you go on Google Maps and you can see 4 years to now, how many buildings have just popped up. So you ask yourself, who are the people that are coming down here? What's the quality of people? These are more professionals. These are people who are highly educated. These are big businesses. We're seeing hedge funds. We're seeing a lot more industry coming here, which Miami, its main industry is real estate. But I'm starting to see we're becoming more diversified with technology and finance that's coming in here. It's going to be interesting. So if you're looking to buy, I would say buy, but negotiate. I think right now people are still on the sideline. They're not too sure what's going to happen. So it really depends on, do you have the money in the bank? Can you weather a storm if the market goes a different direction? And how long you're going to be here? That's the biggest thing. If you're going to be here for a quick 2 years, 3 years, expect some volatility. If you're going to be here for the next 10 years, then Miami's a great market to be in.
What about the incentives? You mentioned that there's a lot of supply coming online. It's evident to everyone. You could see 40 cranes in downtown Miami. A lot of supply coming online. The incentives that these developers are now giving are becoming 1 month, 2 month, 3 month. Do you think it'll continue building up, or do you think it'll get absorbed quickly? Or is there any games like we mentioned at lunch that some of these developers are holding back some inventory and then claiming that it's all 60%, 70% sold?
Yeah, so it really depends. I think Miami, in my opinion, I feel that we're already starting to see a bit of a cooling down. The rates are already taking effect in the market. The migration that we were seeing, in my opinion, I see it's still there, but it's not as drastic as it was before. So people are just right now in a holding pattern to see what's going to happen. There's a lot of other influences that are going to start happening in the market, like the condo crisis that we're seeing for these older buildings. The inventory is starting to shoot up. You can go look at a chart and you'll start seeing the inventories going up. What's going to happen with that? That's going to be something that's very interesting to see how the market pans out. We are seeing concessions too for rents. So these developers are giving 1 month, 2 month rent, no deposit, low deposit. They're doing the best that they can. But it's really going to depend how this market holds up. And if we start seeing the unemployment rate going up, which we are seeing the unemployment rate going up in Miami-Dade County, how high can it go or how high will it go in the next coming months? We're going to have to wait and see how that pans out. I think developers are going to have to be savvy on what they do. Let's say, for example, you're building a multifamily product. Maybe, depending what you're trying to do, instead of just putting rental, maybe you want to sell it. It's all about pivoting. If you're in these developments and you have all these pieces of parcels, it's, you can't just stay with one track mind. What else can you do with this land or with this building? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you have any numbers as far as the unemployment rate? I've never heard that. The unemployment rate from Miami-Dade. Do you know anything on the numbers for that and the numbers pre-COVID?
Well, if you were looking in the beginning of the year, I think the unemployment rate was around 1.5%. And now it's around, I think, 3%.
Okay.
So it's gone up. The unemployment rate has shot up here in Miami. It's going to happen. And it was unsustainable to have such a low unemployment rate. Now it's starting to come up because, a lot of people that are business owners here are small business owners. And when the availability of money becomes less available, what's the first thing you start doing? The last thing you do is lay off people, just because human capital is so expensive to put them back in. You know how hard it is to recruit somebody, to interview, and then you have such a great quality employee. And then once you get to, your business isn't doing that well, man, I'd rather just put it on my credit card, to keep paying for their salary instead of losing them, because then it's going to be a major detriment in your business. Then how are you going to fill that void? So now we're entering to the later part of the cycle where now we're starting to see the unemployment rate go up. Again, how drastic is it going to be?
Yeah. During lunch, you mentioned that, the South Miami area, you've seen there's a trend that new businesses that come online, they don't last very long. What can you attribute to that? Is that recent or that's across, decades that you've seen?
What do you mean, for South Miami?
Particularly for that area. You mentioned that during lunch.
Yeah. So, all right. So for South Miami is unique because there wasn't a lot of density in that area, like what's coming on like online right now. You have Avalon, South Miami. You have the student housing project they're doing, the potential development of City Hall and Sunset Place. With the amount of development that's happening around that whole area, it's surprising that South Miami hasn't grown as quickly. Now, with the administration that's there, they're starting to see a lot more growth. There's a lot more development, so that density should help the businesses that are there. But think about it, when you have Coral Gables, you have Coconut Grove, you have Brickell, you have all these places you can go out to eat or spend the night. What's really gravitating people to those areas,
Right. You're talking the retail more than anything.
I'm talking about retail, and then also like restaurants too. Like, what are the restaurants and what are other things that you can do besides, after you eat, what are the other things you can do after? You're there for an hour or two, what's going to keep you there?
Yeah, I agree. Do you think we'll continue to see an inflow of individuals coming to Miami? Or is this just a post-pandemic, but now it's over, people are going back to their normal lives?
I think that, in my opinion, we're going to see a slowing down in that. I feel like it's already happening. Is the migration going to keep on going? I still think people are going to move here. Miami has a really great story. When you compare to other parts of the country, I still think that we're very new in the sense of we're a very young city, so we're still growing and developing. The migration, it's only going to last depending on how the economy shapes up, because Miami isn't cheap anymore. Miami's gone pretty expensive. I think I read something that Coral Gables is more expensive than Beverly Hills, right? I think there was an article that came up about that. So I think we are going to still see it more so international, from other countries, maybe from the Middle East. Wealthy families are going to need to relocate, bring their capital over here, South America. Miami's still going to be an international hub, in my opinion, but how strong is that momentum? People from New York, California, I think right now that's kind of slowed down a bit.
Agreed. Now, we talked about AI as far as, how it could save America from, the debt that it's incurring, to maybe revive the economy and make it grow fast. Here in Miami, I see a lot of financial services coming on board. There's not much industry here besides tourism, like you mentioned, real estate, financial services, and now AI. Is AI going to be a major force down here in South Florida? I mean, we have the mayor, or not the mayor, what's the city of Miami? Yeah, the city of Miami mayor, right? That's trying to push Bitcoin and more like the future, or is that kind of like another guy in, Saudi Arabia, where he's trying to put all this technology in just for the sake of doing it and really has no plan in place?
So I think that everything that's going on with AI is so brand new and is so disruptive. So if you think about like any piece of technology that's innovative, right? For example, like the car, Henry Ford, when he came out with the cars, there wasn't the turnpike, there wasn't the expressway. We didn't have all these arteries connecting the United States. It took time. People were still horse and wagon going through the dirt. You need to have the infrastructure. The unique thing with AI is that the roads and the pipes are already there. So what you're doing is you're putting a rocket on top of the street, and it's just going to go crazy. It's happening right now. Look at the adoption of ChatGPT. A lot of people are using it. Everyone's using it professionally, either to write their emails, to help them with recipes. The use of it is going to keep on growing. And I think that cities and municipalities and local leaders have to take it serious. They have to invest in it. They have to decide, what's the best way to use this? How can we, not lay off our staff, but how can we use AI to create more efficient processes within the government, like maybe zoning, for example, instead of, waiting months for a rezoning of a property or getting an application done. What if we can fast track that process, or how can we identify parcels within our community that are underutilized that we can reuse, to maybe create affordable housing. I think using AI in a smart way is going to help reduce inefficiencies, but it's going to be something that's disruptive. So there has to be some types of checks and balances. I think Miami is in a unique position for it. So I'm curious to see how, they adopt it.
Agreed. Now, you mentioned that how you're currently using AI as a commercial broker. Explain, I guess, how something very direct, tangible.
Tangible. So if you're going to use AI, let's say you want to do, a letter of intent. You can use an LOI. You can use the AI to basically, write up an LOI, or you can train it on your existing LOIs or what the terms and where you're looking at, and it will spit out some pretty good LOIs out there. Or let's say you want to do a financial analysis. You just want to, you pull up the financials of a building you maybe want to acquire. You throw it in there. It's cool because this is what's going to change the game. You have analysts that help you underwrite and look at these deals. Pretty soon there's going to be an AI that can help you as your assistant. Like, hey, does this deal make sense? Does it pencil out based on my criteria? Can we do this? Can we do that? And then it's crazy because it can also give you suggestions too. Like, hey, this property is located in, Wynwood. It's this type of property. It's 5 stories, whatever. What can I do with this piece of property here? And then you can train it, and come up with other scenarios and best use cases for the property. It's actually pretty cool. It's going to change a lot of what's going on here.
Yeah, I'm thinking the executive secretary positions might be kind of at risk, specifically if you're looking at deals and you want to train the AI to say, when I purchase a property, make sure that I don't forget about these 100 things, So yeah, I have a forgetful memory. So what I do is I always try to write down things, but maybe if instead of writing them down, you just train your AI and use it as your assistant, That's what I'm using, at least. Let's keep going here. Are billionaires getting a good deal here in Miami? I'm changing the subject completely, I know. We see a lot of guys, Jeff Bezos coming into town, Ken Griffin paying these exorbitant prices. At this point, do you think they're getting a good deal, or is it now just like a pissing match, to see who can get the best properties for any price?
It's interesting because you have Jeff Bezos. I think Jeff Bezos lived in Miami at some point. I think he went to school here.
Yeah.
You have Tom Brady moving here. You have a lot of these tech titans coming to Miami. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think they're at the stage of their life where they've done everything. They're like, hey, I want to get a mega yacht. I want to party in Miami and have a good time and enjoy my billions. Maybe they view Miami as their playground, but I'm starting to see a lot more investments are being made within the community. So, you have a guy like Jeff Bezos here, Tom Brady's here.
But is it financial sense, or is it like you mentioned, retired? They're just like, listen, at this point, what am I going to do with the money? I mean,
Think about it. I don't even know if it makes financial sense. When you have like a guy, Jeff Bezos, what is he worth? $250 billion. And I think Miami-Dade County's budget is $12 billion that they're trying to get approved. Just his net worth,
Yeah.
he can fund government services for Miami-Dade County for 20 plus years if he wanted to.
Yeah, I agree.
Do
you remember the story about the guy that sold him the property being pissed because he wasn't made aware that it was Jeff Bezos and he reduced the price? He was trying to sue them.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. It's interesting. I'm really curious to see. Okay, did that agent, how was that disclosed? Maybe the agent had to sign a confidentiality agreement. He probably couldn't tell them anything. I get it, but at the end of the day, that's the price that he wanted it for.
Yeah. As a commercial broker, are you required to disclose? If I ask you who's your buyer, do you have to disclose or not really?
Well, in commercial real estate, it depends. It depends on the client that you have. If you have a large client that's looking to make an acquisition in an area that they normally wouldn't, they don't want to signal to their competition that they're making that move. Because the moment you make that move there, everybody's going to know. In commercial real estate in general, everybody talks amongst each other. So they want to make sure that they're making their moves in silence. Like, for example, Walt Disney World, when they started buying Orlando up, they made sure that no one knew it was them. Because if they did, all of a sudden that piece of land that they were buying for $5, for example, I don't know if it was $5, but for $5, now it's $500. Yeah. So they want to avoid the price gouging that will happen because, yeah, if you're working with one of these bigger firms and I'm the owner of this property, yeah, it's why am I going to sell it to you at my market if you could pay above it?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, and in the public markets for stocks, it's the same thing. I mean, they'll hold off for as long as they need to disclose, maybe Warren Buffett buying a certain stake in a company, because if the news comes out that, a guy like him is buying, everybody else jumps in because they just assume that it's going to be successful,
That's a great point,
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's move along to the elections, the political side of it. I mean, what do you expect was going to happen? Why? And how will it affect South Florida, in your opinion?
I think that South Florida, in South Florida specifically, it's going to depend. Right now, we have an issue with affordability. So whoever comes into office, that's something that's bipartisan. It doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat. You need to solve these problems. You have people that are living in that work in these areas like Berkeley, but they can't afford to live there. They can't work there, and then they have to leave and go all the way to Kendall and then come back. So I think for the real estate market, it depends on who's going to have the best policy to solve the issues that we're having. I think the presidential election is very important. It's an important thing, but I think people forget that your local election is even more important because those are the people that are affecting you directly. And I think people who are watching this, you got to do your research. Who's your commissioner? Who's your council member? Who's the mayor running it? What do they do? What do they stand on? What are their beliefs? What are their policies? What are they doing with the budget and the funds? Because you're paying your tax dollars, and that money is directly going to your community. And what are you getting in return? What's your ROIs?
Well, listen, we want to thank you for being here. Brian Garita, I appreciate your time.
Made in America.